Welcome back to our ongoing content series on the issues most affecting our clients. In the past, in response to client and investor requests, we've produced videos on the importance of standby servicing and how Perpetual Corporate Trust works in this space. Today's session follows on from those, but this time we have our in-house experts on hand to take you through a real-life step-in event. As you're aware, step-in events are rare, but when they happen, they must be managed meticulously. As Australia's largest warm standby servicer, we're uniquely placed to talk you through such an event and offer you our critical insights. So today I have with me Rod Elwood, PCT's General Manager of Debt Market Services, and Michael McCubbin, PCT's Head of Debt Market Solutions. Thank you both for joining me. Rod, I'll start with you. Let's go back to when you were notified of the step-in event. What were your immediate concerns? More importantly, what were your immediate priorities?
So we were contacted on about the 18th of December 2023 by one of the senior funders to advise that this client was about to go into liquidation. We then received a call from the CEO of the client on, unfortunately, the 27th of December, a nice Christmas present, to advise that he had put himself into self-liquidation and that it triggered an event of default under the servicing rights of the transaction. So we were step in. My immediate concerns when I spoke to him was that it was just him left alone in the entity. There were no other staff left, and wasn't quite assured as to how the systems were going to be operated because there was only the CEO left to push the button.
What steps did we take then in those first 72 hours, especially if you didn't have any staff and presumably no system access either?
So we immediately arranged a call with all the key stakeholders, including the CEO himself, the senior funders, two warehouse banks, the legal advisors and the liquidator, to set out the course of action that we proposed to take and to ensure that everybody was in complete alignment and transparency as to the next steps we needed to take. Obviously the concern was no staff and no systems, and we needed to focus on that.
So then operationally, Michael, how did we re-establish servicing and accessing that historical data to be able for us to do that role?
Yeah, so initially we were trying to work with the liquidator to get access to the system. It became clear quite quickly that we needed to go and work with the software vendor and reach an agreement to really access the system, the data, and that was really key in terms of being able to service the portfolio, actually having your hands on the data. Obviously then there was also no staff there to service the portfolio. So we effectively stood up our team to commence the servicing tasks that we had identified as needed priority.
Sounds like the perfect storm. What part did Verify play in stabilising the platform and generating those servicer reports?
Yeah, so Verify as our partner worked very closely with us during the step-in, and Perpetual really front-faced into the borrowers and the councils and any complex situations. And then we had basically arranged for Verify to drive the system and issue the servicer reports on a monthly basis.
And can you explain how we handled those borrower communications?
Yeah, so it's probably twofold if I think about it. There's legal requirements around engaging with the borrowers, so notifying them of the step-in situation and that their obligations effectively remained. There was also councils involved in these tri-party arrangements, so there was also a need for written communication through to not only the borrowers but also the councils. But then practically it's around how do you collect the money in a timely manner and get that money into the right bank account. So that was, to be honest, it was a lot of phone calls into council, a lot of hand-holding, and really our team was very closely dealing with 33 councils across Australia to make sure the cash flows ended up in the trust accounts.
Sounds like it was no mean feat. What was actually involved in detangling those tri-party agreements with the local council?
Yeah, so it was probably less about detangling because the agreement was the foundation of the loan and the loan structure. It was really around ensuring that the cash flows weren't going out to a third party that's now in liquidation, and the repayments are direct into the trust account. So again, really just working with the councils to ensure that they realise their obligation was to pay into the trust, not into this liquidated entity.
At a point where there was obviously so much going on, how did we maintain that constant communication with the funders?
So initially we were meeting with the funders on a daily basis. So that was for many weeks, daily phone calls, pretty structured agendas as to what we would cover in each meeting, and really around Perpetual recommending ways forward on how to handle certain scenarios, and basically getting buy-in from the funders as to the approach that we were taking, given that there was no infrastructure there in the early days. And then as things progressed, obviously there was less need to meet on that daily basis, but we were always checking in with the funders and Perpetual, on a weekly basis.
Turning our minds now to the actual servicer, Rod, I might flick this one to you. Why is it critical that the servicer is an entity within the approved structure, and are there risks associated with that being outsourced?
Yes, there is certainly, and we discovered this on this transaction. I suppose you really want the servicing entity that's originally as part of the original secured structure to remain. If it's not part of the structure, there's a risk of severance of resources, capabilities, and cash flows, which is our paramount importance, is to ensure the continuity of cash flows. And if the structure has a security hold, as a trustee, we have the right to gain access to that particular entity. If the servicing rights have been transitioned to another entity outside of the structure, there's a risk of leakage.
So Perpetual plays a number of roles in these transactions. Is it beneficial for Perpetual to also act as the trustee and the trust manager?
Yeah, it's a much preferred position. Obviously, as a trust manager, I refer to it as being the canary in the cage. You are monitoring the cash flows. You can just see what's happening. The signals are there. If arrears are climbing or reserves are being triggered, it's an indication to us that there's concerns within the entity. And the trust manager can then have dialogue with the senior funders as to any concerns it may have.
So time has passed, the dust has settled, you've secured a successful outcome for all the parties. Looking back now with the benefit of this experience, what would you say were your key takeaways?
Key takeaways were probably threefold. Firstly, the structuring around the transaction really matters, and understanding who all the parties are involved in the end-to-end cash flow. It's really important. Secondly, there's a need to make really quick, pragmatic decisions in the time of crisis, and I think the team did a fantastic job of that during the 9 months that were involved in the transaction. And then it was, the legal documentation really stood up to scrutiny, and in the Australian marketplace we haven't had too many step-ins, and so I think it was a great way to really test and challenge the documentation, and I think it came through really effectively.
To wrap it up, in between all of the learnings that we had through this, what would you say was the one real key aspect to ensure a successful outcome?
The most important, communication. Clear, concise and timely communication and transparency of information flow to the key stakeholders, being the primary warehouse funders, to ensure that we are taking the appropriate action at the right time with their blessing.
Thank you both so much for joining me. It was a really insightful session. I'm sure our clients would have a million other questions. I'm sure I definitely do. So if you do, please feel free to reach out and ask us any questions. Thank you both.